Now, there are questions that are still lingering in the mysterious death of 22-year-old college student Riley Strain. And while the toxicology results and a final autopsy report conducted by the Nashville medical examiner are still pending, it seems like the investigation is shut and closed, as the Nashville Police Department is now stating that preliminary reports show no apparent signs of foul play. And that is an explanation that his family is just not satisfied with. The parents have now ordered a second autopsy in an effort to get as many answers as possible about what exactly happened to their son. Now, what we do know for sure is that this time, the University of Missouri senior was kicked out of a Nashville bar the night of his disappearance. Surveillance of Riley that night shows him running headfirst into a pole and later holding his head. This was just minutes before a short exchange with a police officer. His body was found in a nearby river around 8 miles from where he was last seen alive. And this happened 2 weeks after his initial disappearance. And what has many questioning the details surrounding his death is the various items that were missing from when he was discovered. Jeans and cowboy boots were both somehow missing from his body. His wallet, too, which was found earlier in the week. A friend of the family, Chris Dingman, joined Brian Enton earlier this week to discuss it.
Thing that threw the family for a loop was, the coroner going on record with a news person in Nashville stating about the lack of water in his lungs. It raises more questions. I'm not a crime drama person by no means, but usually water in the lungs means that, they were alive when they went into the water. Unfortunately, the only thing that was found with him, as the police stated in the report, was the watch and the shirt. Everything else was not with him when he was found.
The final toxicology reports will give us more insight, but the questions remain. Back with me, Bernardo Villalona, Misty Marris, and Brian Enton himself. So, Brian, I'm going to turn it to you. Really fascinating interview. Tell us more what Chris Dingman and the family are thinking about this.
Look, it's not that they don't think it was an accident, but they want a full investigation. They think there's enough there to have some doubt that something else may have happened. They don't believe police interviewed all of the witnesses. And the fact that his jeans were not on him when he was found and that he had these size 15 cowboy boots that were not on him, they just don't think it makes sense. There's some theories out there that, he didn't have any stab wounds or anything, that the body would bloat in the water for 2 weeks. That would just make it more difficult for the clothes to come off, and they don't understand why the clothes were off.
I'm going to get to that in a minute. Before we do, talking about a second autopsy, Bernardo, if that is in conflict with the law enforcement's autopsy, the official autopsy, what happens if you have two that are different or conflicting?
Well, still, the question is going to go to the prosecution, because the prosecution is ultimately the one that's going to make the decision as to whether they will accept that second autopsy and decide that they want to move forward with opening an investigation and even further with possibly bringing charges against someone. So ultimately, it's going to fall on the prosecutor to make that decision what they want to do with that second autopsy.
And you talked about possibilities. We actually interviewed Joseph Scott Morgan, forensic death investigator, talked about some ways this might be possible, that it might not be something more nefarious. This is number one. Let's listen.
In a river such as the Cumberland, and I don't know that people have been to Nashville or maybe my hometown in New Orleans where the Mississippi flows through. You can't appreciate how swiftly that water is moving. I mean, it is clipping along. If a body is floating out there, you can imagine those boots filling up, and they'll be swept away many times. He's been in the water for a protracted period of time. It is troubling to me that the pants were missing. I'm curious if he had a belt with him as well. And remember, just as you said, the wallet was found elsewhere. I think that that's a curious thing.
Misty, where do you stand on it? Could it be just explained, or does something still seem off to you?
I think something seems off to me. Joseph Scott Morgan's brilliant. We know this. And so he, as laying out that, hey, look, it's not impossible that this was just an accident, that the force of the water could remove the boots and the pants. But my gut is that there's something more, because the pants are off, the boots are off. That to me triggers something that would say, hey, we should continue an investigation. And Jesse, by the way, maybe they are. They haven't officially closed it.
That's right.
They might be continuing to investigate.
It looks like
well, listen, they did tell us yesterday, Nashville Police, that they were no longer investigating.
Really?
They said that even though these results are still pending?
They said the results are pending, but because it appears to be an accident, there's not an open investigation.
Are you supposed to close it if those results haven't been
You could reopen
finalized?
it.
You can
reopen it,
you
but
can
why?
always reopen it, but what I will request is actually another law enforcement agency to take over the investigation. I mean, I've done that in some of my civil rights cases, is request that that another law enforcement agency do an investigation, give it fresh eyes to see whether there was any foul play in the investigation itself or whether you missed anything.
Yeah, and there's been so much, I have to tell you, rumors, speculation. There was one point they were talking about a homeless individual that might have been wearing Riley's clothes. That hasn't been confirmed. That was, I think, wasn't that misinformation?
Yeah, no, that hasn't. He was found. This also makes it stranger that the pants and the cowboy boots were off because he was found with his shirt on.
Yeah.
The shirt stayed on.
And an Apple Watch.
And the Apple Watch was on, which again, the parents are like, well, why would the shirt be on after 2 weeks? But I mean, cowboy boots can be hard to take off. Granted, yes, there's, you're in the river all that time. There's debris. They could have come off, but.
Misty, were you surprised it took 2 weeks to find him? And they have surveillance. There was a lot of things that were working for law enforcement's favor to maybe get more answers.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about the amount of just electronic footprint, right?
Yeah.
That there's going to be videos, camera phones, and that helps everybody put together. But honestly, Jesse, internet sleuths were finding information almost before we were hearing about the results of the investigation. But look, I think because of the river component of it, the body can move quite far away from wherever the entry point to the river was, however that happened.
And look, I still think this is not closed in our perspective. I mean, there's still those outstanding results. We don't know what the second autopsy will reveal. I still feel weird about this case, and obviously we'll continue to follow it. Listen, Brian, Misty, Bernardo, A panel. Thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.